I used to hate editing photos. Hated it. Hated it. Like going to the dentist was your birthday and Christmas compared to the idea of editing photos. I almost stopped taking pictures because of it. But the software has gotten so much better. I'm not the world's greatest photo editor now, but wow, have things improved. In fact, I kind of enjoy it now. That's how much better the software has gotten. So I thought for grins we'd edit a photo together so you could get some idea of what this photo editing thing is all about. I use Darktable. I used to use Lightroom. Didn't love it. Darktable just seems to work better for me, but you can use either one. They're a combination of a light table and a darkroom. They're non-destructive, so you can go back at any time. You aren't destroying your photos. So without further ado, first I'm going to import a folder of raw photos that I shot the other morning. There's nothing great here, no A's for sure, mostly C's and D's, but that's fine. You can put your mouse over one and hold the Z key, that'll give you a preview. Then you can move through the photos quickly with the arrow keys. It takes just a second for the photos to come clear. It looks like I shot these in the dark, but in reality it was just kind of a super overcast day. I like this guy. He was on the move, so I couldn't even keep him in frame. Normally that photo might get tossed, but I like the dog so much, I want to figure out something I can do with it. Instead of trying to hide the fact that he's not well framed, maybe we'll just boldly make it a featured part of the photo and push in close. Plus that face is so great, I think that face should be highlighted. There's a nice system for rating photos, which is really useful if you have 500 photos, not that useful if you have 5. You can also color tag, which is great. Double-click the image on the light table. If you want to bring it into darkroom, you can also just hit the D key. If you haven't set up Darktable before, drop down here to the lower right corner. We'll pick out some modules we might want to use. If you click twice on the ones you want, you can add them to your favorites panel, and that's a huge, huge time saver. I'm going to grab base curve, color correction, contrast, brightness, and saturation, crop and rotate, exposure, filmic, retouch, shadows and highlights, soften, spot removal, vignetting, and white balance, and that's probably enough to get us started. I'll start off by clicking crop and rotate just so I can make sure there's actually a picture there. I think there's probably something. I can probably make a little Instagram square out of this. I've certainly posted worse photos. Normally at this point I'd fix the horizon because this photo's pretty crooked, as are so many of the photos I take. But in this case I think if I do that I'm going to lose too much of that eye that I'm already just on the edge of. So I probably won't do that. I probably will just let it be as it is. Life's all about managing compromises, and this is going to be one of those. Up in the right-hand corner, there's a button that lets you take a snapshot of the photo as it is right now, which is nice to have. We can refer back to it after we've made some adjustments. We can see if we've improved things or not. We definitely need to adjust the white balance. This photo looks way too warm to me. And once we get some nice cool tones in here, we can adjust the tint so that we can have a little more red to the photo. I usually work on this stack from bottom to top, but this is a little difficult in this case because the exposure is so much darker than what I'm imagining I'm going to want. When we tap the exposure module, the other one will close automatically, and we're going to tap the O key right now. That's going to toggle so that we can see where we're overexposed and underexposed, where the whites are just blown out and there's no detail, and where something is so black that there can't be any detail. The whites will show up as red, the blacks will show up as blue, and we aren't going to want a whole lot of either one of those. Of course, no sooner do I say that than I have to blow out the sky in order to get the dog's face bright enough. Conveniently, there's a workaround though. You can have a second exposure module, or third or fourth or fifth, whatever you want, and you can take a little region, which I'm going to do up here. I'm going to create this little mask around this chunk of the sky, and I'm going to lower the exposure on it so that I can keep the detail in it in case I want to use it later. Now, as anyone who's ever owned a dog knows, a light-colored dog will have dark-colored sleep in the corner of his eyes, and a dark-colored dog will have light-colored sleep in the corner of his eyes, because Mother Nature's a sadistic freak, which is why there's a spot removal tool to take care of either color. Now, what I wish is that I had a spot removal tool that would follow me around in real life. Look at that face. Shadows and highlights are next. You can really rock any of these sliders hard if you want to see what they do. But for the actual final photo, you want to make subtle adjustments. You want to make it plausible that that's really actually a dog and not some crazy demonic creature that's going to jump out and grab you. So a little here and a little there, and all those little tiny improvements will add up, hopefully, to an improved photo. And if you really get yourself lost in the forest, you can always double-click on the label above the slider, and it'll take you right back to where you started. The next module, Filmic, is relatively new, and it does so much that I'm just going to leave a link, so if you're interested, you can read all about what it does. I'm just going to make one little adjustment to middle grade luminance. On this monitor, at least, that looks like an improvement. Contrast, brightness, and saturation do exactly what you'd think. I usually like to take all of the saturation out of the photograph and try to get with the brightness and the contrast sliders the best black and white photograph I can, and then I can slide back in some color on the saturation. I find that if I start with a good black and white photo, I can be a little bit more restrained with the color, which I think I'm going to like in this case. You honestly probably wouldn't use all of these modules together, but I think it's useful in this case just to sort of see what's here, some of the things that are available. In the color correction module, the white dot is the highlights, and of course the dark dot is the shadows. In photographs of dogs, sometimes it's tempting to just take the leashes out altogether, but in this case the leash doesn't bother me that much. If the color's a little bright, I can probably deal with that. But when it comes to like electrical wires or telephone poles or light posts that are inconveniently placed or don't look great, sometimes it's faster just to take them out. In this case, all I'm going to do is just draw a little mask and then desaturate the leash a little bit so the color's not quite competing with the dog for attention. You'll see I'll do one side of the leash and get that right, and then when I circle around I can grab the other side of the leash with the same tool, and that'll give me the same amount of desaturation. Now that bright leash isn't quite so much in your face. Love it. Finally, vignetting, which in a lens can be a very bad thing. When you don't have an equal distribution of light all across the lens, your corners get dark. In post-production can be a really nice thing because you can force focus onto your subject. So we're going to draw a little circle around this guy, get it just about roughly the shape of his head so we don't darken that. Then we're going to hit the blend button. We're going to drop down here to uniformly, and we can slide the slider so it's not quite so obvious that we're manipulating the edges of the frame. We want it to be subtle, but we also want the dog to pop. And that's pretty much it. Hopefully we've improved it. You can click on the snapshot that we took in the beginning, and we can see what it looks like before and what it looks like after. And you can hit that button in the middle and you can make it come from all different angles if that helps you in some way. You can hold the Z key again so that you can see the dog without all of the controls and everything around it. You can just focus on the picture. That's kind of handy. You can hit the L key. That'll take you back out to the light table and you can see all of the images that you started with and the modified version of the one we've been working on. You can also tap Control E if you're ready to export your file. I think I'm going to go to lunch for an hour and come back and look at this thing and see if there's any changes that I want to make. It does not hurt to look at these things with fresh eyes. I think I might blur some of the darker parts of the image up above the horizon, maybe even knock them back a little bit so they're not quite as dark. But I think roughly this is what the photo is going to be. Anyway, that's my process for editing photos. You got all that, right? No problem. You can rewind if you have to. I'll leave the link for Darktable in case you're interested.